for Thursday, October 26th. I'm Peter MacArthur. Yeah, I mean, look outside the window. We are deep into fall. We're getting ever closer to the end of the year. We had the other day a guest talking about getting your financial house in order. But, equally important, maybe even more in the forefront, are you doing what you want to be doing? Are you working where you want to be working? Chris Burkhard joining us, Placer Staffing in Newark this morning. Hey, sir, how are you?
It's terrific to be back on your show.
It's good to have you, no doubt. We talked a lot over our time together, Chris, about the Great Resignation. I think it's safe to say that's a little bit in the rear view right now, where people were jumping jobs, right? I guess the question to you this morning is, if I am a job seeker, is this still a good time to change jobs?
Good question, because the job market is a real contradiction. We see employers holding on to workers. Yet I hear from job seekers, it's taking much more time and it's taking longer to get hired. It's also very confusing to see, there's that measure of job postings, jobs that are posted where employers are looking to hire. And it's still almost 2 job postings for every available worker. Yeah. So it's all over the place all at once. But I propose that it's one more thing that's been normalized post-pandemic. So believe it or not, this is just normal job search stuff. There are stories during the pandemic where people would post their resume and literally get 2 offers by dinner time. That's good if you're that person, but that's also a bit unusual and maybe a bit over the top. I also think, Pete, what's really interesting is that workers change jobs when they are unhappy. Mm-hmm. And when they are confident that they can get a new job. There has been a lot of change, and I propose that many workers have gotten a bit more bump in pay and gotten more flexibility. And I think they're aware that, if I make this change from this situation, it's just not going to happen by next Monday. It's a little longer-term commitment to make that change.
Chris, these jobs we speak of, they rose by 336,000 last September. It was huge. It was the biggest gain since January. We saw unemployment as well hold steady, about 3.8%. Those numbers historically strong. And with interest rates where they are, right, will this cool demand for jobs and hiring potentially the rest of the year?
Well, it's an absolute blockbuster jobs report, and every economist expected less hires and maybe even more layoffs. And it's a crazy big number, Pete. It's the highest since January. And I like to dig into this. It's not much of a hobby, tearing into numbers. But one thing I found is that for the 6 months, the first 6 months of the year, this job report gets reviewed the next month. Mm-hmm. And each month it was adjusted lower, which is very unusual for that kind of pattern. Mm-hmm. But there's definitely something building back. In that the last 3 months, that jobs report was adjusted up. So I have a sense that the economy and jobs really are taking off. And then when I dug into it further, there's a reason for all this. These strong gains came in areas like retail and construction and the airlines and in public education and restaurants, where people still had a ton of vacancies left from the pandemic.
Right.
So these are strange labor days, but there's also an explanation that all kind of balances out. And, some companies and industries are just filling in where they, were not up to pre-pandemic levels.
So along these lines, Chris, you talked about research showing that companies across all jobs and industries are taking about 44 days to fill a role, and some industries much higher, 68-day range. That said, what can companies and applicants as well expect from the hiring process when it takes this long?
Well, I know this is a personnel-oriented question, but I think there's a lot in it if you're a hiring manager or if you're a job seeker. But the first thing is that this days to hire has gone up for 4 straight years. So the supply and demand for work is really out of whack. And you compare what people want in a job and what's offered, and there's just less people in the workforce as, boomers are retiring in really high numbers each week. There's simply less people to hire, Pete. And I don't know how you feel or if your listeners feel, but skills are changing. I mean, jobs are getting, this term digitized, but most of us are really playing catch up to learn new skills with all these new technologies.
Yeah.
And to hire today, you just need to do more than you did in the past to hire. And I think that's hard for companies. So I see a lot of companies doing things like retraining or promoting from within, where you really have to be creative to find your talent. So hiring has never been easy, but it's a really complex situation these days where you have to operate very differently. But if you're an applicant, I think there's some empowerment in this, being informed. We take a lot of calls from candidates who are just so confused why it takes so long to get hired. And frankly, consultants say it all the time, is if a business has an overcomplicated process, in the end, you will lose talent. And some people stick by that, and a lot of organizations work hard to change it. But that's something that we deal with every day.
It's a great point. And that those days are no longer for anyone than that person who's looking for that next career. A lot of people are out there struggling to have the career they want, Chris, and they want to make the changes we're talking about. But what advice would you have for them at this point in time?
Kind of simple stuff, but I don't know anyone that doesn't think the change isn't hard, like right now.
Yeah.
So overcoming inertia is real. So a lot of times I just encourage people to take a small step forward and do something. But what most people tackle is like they pull out their resume on their PC and they start filling out applications. That's okay. But I really encourage people to spend some time on themselves, carve out that half hour. We've talked about that before, but I think it goes a long way to thinking about what you want, reflecting on that, and making sure that whatever you're applying to or whatever you're working on your resume is relevant. But I just usually suggest, where do you want to work? Why? Big company or small company? Where do your friends and neighbors work? What culture is best for you? What type of work? What pace of role? And those are basic things. I know a lot of people just work for a paycheck or a job, but you can also be happy in that. And these are just some good things to think about. And then I would say, go find somebody to help you with this. Go find a career coach or an agent. You always allow me to say that Placers is always here, but there are a lot of people that are trying to help people with this, both at the state level, Department of Labor, and private people. So, find someone that can help you be objective and think through your career, and then help you with job search tool type stuff like resumes and all that stuff. But I find most people don't give it the time, and they just expect that new job to show up on Monday. And it's like anything else. It's what you put in it, you get out of it.
Yeah, and I think it's an important thing for you to point out. Listen, take that minute and focus on you and your wants, because when you're in the position of looking for a job, we can get this rush ahead mentality and lose sight of those important things that really sit right before us, Chris. Like, what do I want to do and where do I want to do it?
Well, if you will allow, my dad always said that he sees people plan a birthday party or a vacation more than they plan their career.
Yeah.
And at first blush, that makes sense because they're like fun things, right? We know how to plan them. We know what to do. But there's a reflection in that. Most people don't know what to do to get a job. So you got to get some help to know what to do. So it's a two-part story.